Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Newo Wellness Podcast. I am your host, Hailey Rose, and this is a space where we grow and nourish all aspects of self. I hope you guys are having a wonderful Wednesday today. I know it's been hectic for a lot of us, especially me, but I'm doing well, and I hope you guys are doing well as too. And I'm so excited to jump right into this podcast, today's episode, with our special guest today. But before we start, I did want to show you guys a video before we jump into it. And also, I just want to remind you guys that this is a safe space for all of us. And, you're feel free to comment and ask questions as we go. And yeah, I'm just going to jump right into it. Hold on.
Jeremiah 29:11 reads, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you, not to harm you. Plans to give you hope in the future." I feel like I'm living that plan out. I feel like the things that happen to us in life, they're not designed to stop us. They're designed to reposition us so we can come in contact with what God really has for us. And so everything that I do, man, I do it to honor God because I feel like God gave me a second chance at life. And so I feel like I'm doing what God put me on this earth to do.
In life, we all face different struggles. And what I've come to realize is that when we face adversity, there are two types of people. There are people that say, "Why me?" and there's people that say, "Try me." But in the end, we need to figure out what our why is. Why we do what we do.
The reason why I do the work that I do is I know that there's so many other kids, so many other youth, people in general that have gone through the same things that I've gone through. And I want them to know that they're not alone. And by me sharing my story, it's healing. Every time I share my story, it's healing. I'm able to heal, and I know that I'm able to impact other people. I have walked a mile in these kids' footsteps. I've been there, I've done that. And my story is so relatable to what they're going through, what they might be going through right now. You talk about, kids growing up without their father. I've been that. I've experienced that. Family members that have struggled with addiction. Majority of my family, has struggled with addiction. My mom died because of her addiction. Her body just started to shut down. You talk about sexual abuse. I've been there. I was a kid that was sexually abused. So it's so important for us to, or for myself to give back and tell these kids that there is a better way. It would have been so easy. Would have been so easy for me as a kid to want to quit, but I wanted to break that cycle. And the way that I broke that cycle was I knew at a young age I was going to have kids, and I didn't want my kids to go through the same thing that I went through. And it's a choice. We all have the power of a choice. There's no secret to it, but you've got to learn to surround yourself with positive people. That's the only way you'll obtain whatever it is that you want to be in life. The biggest thing for me when people ask are like, how did you do it? What inspired you? I didn't want to allow my situation to become my excuse in life. I recall this one time, this young girl was actually in northern Manitoba, came up to me after, and she said, "JR, after hearing your story, we have a lot in common." She said, "My mom passed away the same year your mom passed away." And then she said, my mother's name was Bobby, and my mom's name as well. And she gave me a big hug after, and she just said, "Thank you." And that's what pushes me to continue to do the work that I do, is because if I can just inspire hope in other people and let them know that they are not alone and that, you know, there is light at the end of the tunnel, then that's what it's all about. That's what my true calling is to give back and help other people. You know, I remember when Henry Giersma Williams came and spoke at my school one time, and I was like, I want to be exactly like that, man. And to be able to live out my childhood dream and achieve that, playing professional football for the Edmonton Eskimos, it was a dream come true.
It's been a long day without you, my friend, and I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. We've come a long way from where we began. Oh, I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. When I see you again.
What a great video. A little emotional. He's great. JR's great. So JR LaRose is a 9-year veteran of the... Oh my goodness. A video was playing in the background there. Sorry, guys. JR LaRose is a 9-year veteran of the CFL and a 2011 Grey Cup champion. A proud member of One Arrow First Nation, he is an accomplished speaker who has been recognized and awarded for contributions to his community. JR's path to success has been a long and hard-fought journey that began at a low-income housing in Edmonton's inner city. JR's upbringing was significantly impacted by his mother's exposure to abuse suffered during her time at a residential school. JR overcame an environment of poverty, drugs, and abuse. The sport of football was the opportunity that JR longed for. His passion for football as a youth would turn out to be his profession as a young man. Now retired from football, JR is a gifted speaker whose story of redemption is universal, breaking down racial and generational walls, bringing forth a sense of hope and community. I welcome you, everyone, JR LaRose.
What's up? Time to say hello. Hailey, good to see you. How you doing?
I'm doing good. JR's in an airport, it looks like.
Yeah, I am. So if it's loud, the people on the PA system start getting loud. I told them to shut the hell up. No, I'm just joking. Just getting ranked. Well, I'm on the podcast here. Okay, but yeah, no, I'm traveling back home. I was in Edmonton. Went with my son on a little trip to Edmonton to watch the Oilers game, which they lost. Hurt my heart. But yeah, now we're traveling.
I heard
back.
it was cut short.
What was cut short? My trip?
No, the game.
No, it hurt my heart. They lost in overtime. Hurt my heart.
Dang.
Came here all the way for this win, and I got that L. But whatever, it happened. So I got to spend quality time with my son, so it was good.
Yeah, that's always nice. You know, sons always look up to their dads and having a good time at hockey games. I know for my little brothers, that's all they want to do is go watch hockey. So I bet you he had a fun time anyways.
Yeah, he had a blast. The atmosphere was, it was pretty cool. Is we got to go to Edmonton to the not Eskimos anymore, the Elk practice training facility where I used to play at for 4 years. So it had been like 12 years since he's been in like the locker room, and they changed everything. So for him to go and see some of the coaches, guys that he knows very well and used to play with and against was pretty dope.
Dang, so you just go everywhere, hey?
Kind of, yeah, just kind of. I guess.
Well, I kind of just want to jump right into it. And today's topic was healthy masculinity, and you know, I couldn't think of anybody else to come on here, and so I want to say, like, I'm very grateful and thankful that you could come on here today and, you know, like, be with us and be able to talk about healthy masculinity, because I know it's difficult to talk about, and you know, a lot of people need to hear your story and hear your perspective about masculinity. So what? Like I even question this myself. Like what masculinity even is, and the difference between healthy or toxic. Like what does it mean?
That, that's a great question. And you hear the word being thrown around a lot, toxic masculinity. And it's not necessarily that I have an issue with that, but I think what people need to understand is if you don't know what toxic is, like if you've grown up in an environment where you didn't see healthy, that's all you really know is, posturing up. Well, we'll just get into what masculinity, healthy masculinity or toxic masculinity. We'll start off with toxic masculinity. I think as men, personally, from a young age, I was taught to never show emotion. Don't cry. Don't be like a girl. If I'm seen as that, that's seen as weakness. Even from in the sports realm, we're seen as, it's cool to be, to be a womanizer, to be this. You got to be the breadwinner. Yeah, you got to be the head. You got to posture yourself to almost bully other people and dominate. And so I think it becomes ingrained in people at a young age. And from a societal standpoint, I think that's where we fail our young boys, as opposed to what is healthy masculinity. That's something that I've learned probably honestly over the last 10 years. And it's a journey, something that I'm learning every day. I'm just trying to be a better, especially better man and better father. And for me, one of the things that I've learned now is to be able to show emotion. Like I'm coming up with a new topic. Be so strong that you can be soft. There's nothing wrong with being an alpha male. I tell people all the time, like football was seen as an aggressive sport. Well, it was an aggressive sport in a controlled environment. That aggression doesn't translate, into the real world. And I think that's the biggest. I think some of the misconceptions is you need to be hard, tough all the time. And I think when we become when we don't show emotion, we become desensitized to doing things. And I think, raising two young boys, well, they're not that young anymore, they're 18, 16, but I think for me, it was being able to now show emotion. And in some of my presentations, like if I'm doing a keynote or speaking, sometimes I get emotional, I'll cry. And before I would fight that and I would hold that because I was like, I don't want people to think that I'm weak, or I don't want people to feel sorry for me. Where now it's like, I just let it go. For me, that's healing. By letting these tears go, it's how I heal. And I think there's more strength in being able to release that, because when I held it in, I hurt people closest to me. And that's where toxic masculinity comes into play.
Wow. How did that affect you? Like, because, I've seen it too, where kids are like literally taught at a young age where they can't be vulnerable. Like these kids can't, show any emotion that they're feeling, whether they want to cry or be upset. And I know that affects kids as they grow older and when they're an adult. So I just how did that really affect you? And once you were older and, were open to the world and in society, or even just relationships with people and showing emotions, in what ways did that affect you?
Well, I think I'll start with just saying, for one, undealt with trauma in our lives will manifest one way or another, at some point throughout our life. And it's, you need to tackle it before it tackles you. Use a little punt, tackle it before it tackles you. And I think as men, growing up at a young age, like you said, we are not taught to be able to show emotions. So now we become desensitized. So now we become hardened. We've never let that pain go. We compartmentalize it, put it over here. We put this pain over here. We put it in a box. But with undealt with trauma, that's going to come up. That's going to surface some other way in a relationship. And maybe it's a girlfriend or family member or a wife or somebody else, somebody you care about. Well, now they're taking on that undealt with trauma paid because we were taught not to show emotion. Everybody needs to be able to show emotion. And what's so crazy about that is we look at, when someone scores a goal, hockey, they start hugging, they jump on each other, hugging, they're embracing each other.
Yeah. No
one ever questions that as weakness. But when we think about it now from a societal standpoint, that's almost like the only time that is accepted for men to show that type of emotion. You look at guys that score a touchdown in football, same thing. They're jumping each other, they're giving them a hug, hugging each other. But in the real world, right, if we're to do that, if I were to hug, just another dude, some guys might be like, well, bro, what are you doing? Don't touch me. I'm just showing love. Mm-hmm. But from a societal standpoint, we're taught not to be that. If we hug another man, we do that, we're seen as, you're being gay or something else. And I'm just trying to love. You know what I mean? Like, and that's what we need to retrain people. And so for myself, to go back to your question, I think from a young age, I had heard a lot of people, and this is why I do this training. I think you look at the meaning of the redemption, it's to right wrongs. And I've hurt people along the way. And I acknowledge that. I'm not proud of that. But for me, it's like being able to recognize if I can help guide other people and avoid them from making the same mistakes that I made, that's truly what this is about. But for myself, I had to go on a long journey in this program that I started with, or not that I was part of, with the BC Lions in 2011. It's called "Be More Than a Bystander: Break the Silence on Violence Against Women." Has really changed, 1000% changed me, shaped me as as a man and as a father, because there's just things I just didn't know. I think it's sorry. Can you hear that background noise? No,
kind of, but you're good. Like I can still hear
I'll
you.
just talk real loud, but I'll try and talk over this, speaking in French right now. But for me, when joining that program, it really showed me what it was to be a man, but look not from my eyes, but from females' perspective. What they're faced with on a day-to-day basis, but also from a toxic standpoint in a culture of that's been deeply enrooted. And we need to posture up. We need to be aggressive. We need to, if we're not seen as that, if we're not, this aggressive human being, we're not a man. And not everybody is hyper masculine. And there's nothing wrong with being, an alpha male. But I think for myself, it's constant learning, taking ownership of the pain and hurt that I've caused other people, and acknowledging that and trying to teach others. So I don't know if I answered.
I think it makes it difficult for men to show that love and give love, because say you didn't receive that, when you were young, being told like, I love you, or parents coming and hugging you, grandfathers, grandmothers, hugging you and showing you that appreciation, or, like little things like that. I can see even myself, like still seeing it, and why is it so hard to, hug the people that I love, or saying I love you to the people that I love, especially, men. How often do fathers say to their kids, like, I love you, and hug them and show them that, that little vulnerable side to them, to be able to, have real talks and talk about stuff that's hard to talk about, and be willing to have that conversation with your child. Because man, when that kid grows up, they bottle it up. And what happens when you bottle stuff up that you're going through? You explode.
Yeah.
You react, you get angry, you get upset, and then we wonder why people are, going to addictions, or running to, alcohol. And a lot of that comes back from, when you were a kid, and when you were nurtured as a young one.
You said two things, just saying I love you. And I think for men that is tough. And so when I do my guys only session, I work with pro athletes, people at the college level, people that work in the trades, different industries. We do a men only section, and we talk about that. And one of the first questions that I asked, I said, how many of your fathers told you that they loved you growing up? And I'd say maybe 20-30% of the people put their hand up. So you look at that 70% that have never been told that, they're by their dads, that they loved them. And that's almost a generational thing. And so how do we now break out of that box? You hit the nail on the head. We need to start normalizing these type of conversations. I tell people, I said, you need to make time for just you and your son, or your kids, whoever it is. But that's quality time that you just can't get that time back. And I think kids are so impressionable, or young people are so impressionable at such a young age. They're a sponge. They're longing for it. Like, I grew up without a father, so I know what it's like not to have a dad in my life. And I wanted that more than anything. Like, to have my dad tell me that he loved me. It's my mom struggled with addictions. I know my mom loved me. She just didn't know how to love me. Look at the generation impacts from the residential school. So for me, now that I have two boys, I'm hugging my kids all the time when I get a chance. I'll try and give them a hug or a kiss, and now 16, 18. So come on, Dad, you can't do that. But it's like, I need to do that. Like, I need to show you love, because you're going to have kids one day, and I would be failing you as a man, as a father, if I didn't show you love. Because who are you now learning from? Are you looking to what we see in media? Because I'll tell you what media was telling us what it is to be a man. It's like, you need to be what I just said earlier. You need to become hardened and all these other things and become desensitized to certain things. We don't show emotion, and it just fails. Relationships fail on both ends. But I think as what we can do as men is have an understanding and just normalize these conversations on what it is, to be a man and to be a protector. Even from a traditional standpoint, getting back to our men protecting our women. Is another big thing, rather than just objectifying or seeing them as objects. I think that has become so normalized, especially not just in sports culture, in culture, society, period. We look at the media, what's being portrayed, and all these things that sex sell, and men objectifying women and saying like, oh well, she wasn't dressed like that, she wouldn't receive that type of attention, blah 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 blah. Nah, it's on us to show some sort of self-control, and it's having these conversations.
I was talking to my buddy earlier, actually, like before this podcast, and I didn't even like realize that I was just like ranting to her, that I was just like telling her, like everything that had been going on, and I didn't even like think twice. Like I should be thankful that I have somebody willing to listen to me, that's just listening to me speak, where I can be vulnerable, where I feel safe and comfortable, where I can just express any emotion that I'm feeling, whether I'm happy or I'm mad, I'm having a good day, a bad day. I just like realize like it's so important that people, like individuals, adults, elders, youth, like kids, have somebody that they can show that emotions, like those emotions to have that person in your life that you're comfortable with, to have like a safe talk. And like when I was like younger, I hid away a lot of the time. I was very reserved, and so I pushed away the people that I loved when I was going through like my own stuff. And I know like my parents respected that space, right?
Yep.
Giving you that space, allowing you to whatever, debrief whatever you needed to do. But like you said, at the same time, as much as, and I'm young, like I'm 19 years old. So, I mean, I'm a year older than your kid here, but from my standpoint, and like you might take something away from this, but see, like when I saw it, as much as I didn't want it, right? Like, no, don't hug me. Like, this is weird. This is uncomfortable. At the end of the day, like that's what you want. You do. A kid does want that nurture feeling and to be hugged and to be told that, you love them. And we might try, push you away because, we want to be older and we're adults now. And we have this mindset that like, we're too grown up and like, ew, like, don't do that, especially like when other people are looking. And but I look back now, when I was living with my parents, and it was important that I did that too. And that I showed you that I loved you, and that I told you that, you're loved and I appreciate what you do. Because as us kids, we have to break that barrier that was set in place to us to, this whole masculinity thing. And making sure that our parents and our grandfathers and our grandmothers know that it's okay to be emotional and to talk about, whatever is going on in their life, because I feel too that there's a lot of shame attached to it. And, that comes from trauma, and that's not your fault. The stuff that you went through and that you dealt with when you were a kid, that's not your fault. But the fact that you're talking about it and you're trying to normalize this and bring it to life and make sure that, this awareness is here, that we can stop that. That's what needs to happen, right? Like you said, like we're getting so desensitized to what's actually going on, but we need to educate our people. We need to, learn from each other and tell each other that we love them, bring them up, and because mental health matters.
Yeah.
And man, like our people, Indigenous people, face so many traumatizing things, struggles, and battles, because it's not that they're alone, but they're not telling people what's going on in their life. So then they feel alone. You feel alone because you're scared to, say what's going on in your life. I've dealt with it. Like, I still hide things that goes on in my life because of, maybe the profile that I have. And that's too something that, is attaches to masculinity is, you have this profile. You're a teacher, so you can't really say much, or I don't know, like, say for me, like, I'm a representative. So if I talk about this and say, like, I was feeling this way, what are people going to think about me, or what are they going to say about me? But it doesn't matter, because it's normal. It's normal to go through that. We're all people. We're all human. Like, we face stuff. I mean, you can't hide that.
Yeah. And that's I think you're 1,000% right. We look at it just from a masculinity standpoint, from a man. We were taught not to ask for help, right? We just figure it out. You don't need to go help. Don't go get help. Don't go get counseling. Don't seek other people's advice or whatever. It's you just figure this crap out on your own. And I know that's how I was taught. My relatives, uncles, older mentors that I have, we're taught that from a young age. And I think that's where we hurt other people, is we try and take it on. Every time that I try to do things on my own without seeking guidance or help, I fail, or else I've hurt other people. And that's one of the biggest things that I've had to learn, is being able to be okay with seeking help. Yeah, I don't know things. I can't figure everything out on my own. I need help. And that's, again, going back to what we said, normalizing these conversations. You look at reconciliation, right? With the TRC, everything happening now. Reconciliation is to have an understanding of what is gone, what is the truth of what has happened in the past with the residential schools. Guess what? There's a lot of hurt. There's a lot of abuse in our communities with our men. We look at domestic violence in our communities, in our homes. Let's have an understanding. Let's understand there's a history there as well. This is reconciliation as well. Having understanding, meeting people where they're at. Number one, coming in a place of no judgment. There's a thing that I say: hurt people hurt people. Our young men have been hurt. And so now, guess what? What they've seen in their homes has now been normalized. So now they're taking that into other relationships. So not everybody, but statistically speaking, there's a greater number of our men that have come from abusive homes. Well, guess what? They now perpetrate that in their relationship. So it comes down to what you said earlier: having education, normalizing these conversations, so that we can avoid, these pitfalls and having these high rates of domestic violence and abuse in our community. Amongst, from being caused from our young men. I'm not saying, women don't cause violence. There's violence on women against men, but, statistically speaking, again, most of the stuff happens, it's men on women. And, we're speaking on masculinity, but it comes down to educating, having these conversations. And what's crazy? And, I hate to say it, but it's just being true. Going into a lot of our indigenous communities, is I get so much more pushback from leadership on not wanting to have these conversations for fear of guilt. Maybe some of the people in leadership or other men have been perpetrators of this. But the more we continue to hide and try and sweep this under the rug, nothing gets better. It's being able to take ownership, having that ownership piece. That's where we start to move forward as a nation, as people.
Mm-hmm. How did you start to actually talk about the way that you're feeling, the things that you were dealing with in your life? Because I know, like, you've been through some stuff, and to be able to talk about that, I know that takes a lot, and like takes a lot out of you. And even like bringing up old stuff that happened to you, I know that it can be difficult, because it's a part of you that, like, people are going to know, that people are going to see that side of you that you don't really talk about. And I know for like people, like, how do you do it? How do you just start talking about masculinity and like what you were going through? How were you okay? Like, how were you comfortable to do that? Like, was it just a switch? Were you just like, I need to talk about this? Was it like, I see other people going through this, I'm going to stop it? Like, what was it?
I think for me, like I had seen a lot of abuse in my home. Like I remember at a young age, I was like 10 years old, seeing my mom thrown down a flight of stairs, and I didn't talk about that for years. I didn't talk about it until I was an adult, and that almost like I felt so embarrassed and ashamed that I wasn't protecting, the woman that I love so much, woman that brought me into this world. And it was probably when I was 26, I think, when I actually started talking about, because I heard another
Yeah.
pro athlete share his story. And that's when I was like, man, for one, I'm not alone. Like for years, I felt very isolated, alone. And then I was like, this only must be happening to my family. But you had said something at the beginning, or just like in the last minute of, almost, putting yourself out there. Well, that's being vulnerable. And I think that's another part of how we push this healthy masculinity, is being able to be open and vulnerable, knowing, okay, for one, I know I'm not the only person that's been impacted by violence or abuse. And I know I'm not the only one that's hurt other people in the rooms that I'm speaking to. So I think for me, it's knowing, recognizing, okay, I am not that person that hurt other people anymore. I'm this person now that's trying to help other people on their healing journey. I wish I was taught this at a young age. And so for me, knowing it's what really helps me, and this is healing for me. Every time when I speak and I share my truth, I share my story, it's healing. I'm letting this go. I'm letting this pain go. It's like I'm releasing it every time. It's like a therapy counseling session every time. Every time I go and speak. And so for me, it's now being able to be open, be vulnerable, not being afraid to show emotion. And I share tons of different stories, because I think I'm real. I think that storytelling is everything, because people can relate to stories. So for me, why I started doing it was, I started speaking in schools, talking about the importance of staying in school, blah, 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 blah. I mean, it's important, don't get me wrong. But then I knew, I was like, I had a story. I've gone through a lot. I was a kid that was sexually abused. I've witnessed, my mom being thrown down a flight of stairs, see my sister being badly beaten up, had to visit her in hospitals, and I became desensitized to a lot of things because I wouldn't show that emotion. And again, going back to what I said earlier, like I'd hurt a lot of people, throughout the years of, I'm 38 now. But
Holy, you're old.
damn, deadly uncle.
Just kidding.
But I think it goes back to knowing that I'm able to hopefully help other people. That's why I do the work that I do. I'm so passionate of doing that work, because we all have a story at the end of the day. We all maybe we come from different walks of life, but everyone has a story.
Did you go through that with sports? Because I know how competitive sports are now, especially for men. And I know, man, kids can't even cry on the field or do any of that stuff. They can't be weak. And so did you deal with anything like that, with your football career and even as a kid?
You think I play a sport where, aside from MMA and maybe rugby, we're running to try and take each other's heads off. You know what I mean? We got equipment. We are the most masculine, I think, of all the other sports that are out, just being from a physical standpoint. You got guys range from 320 pounds to 180 pounds running full speed at each other. So from a young age, I remember coaches, telling me don't ever cry, get up, don't let them see you show any type of emotion. And if you were, it's almost like you're seen as less than, oh, you're soft, you don't deserve to be on this team. So now guys are doing extra things just to get this sort of acceptance from these coaches that they look up to. And so I'll tell you what, even at the pro level, it's a whole nother type of beast, because you look at people's paychecks, livelihoods are on the line. And it's supposed to be the biggest masculine macho sport that you can play. But I'll tell you what, when I was done playing football, and I'm now coaching my son's teams, well, I'm taking all that toxic language stuff that I've learned from a young age that was ingrained in me. Well, I'm saying the exact same things to these young kids who are just looking up to me as oh, I just want to impress coach. What can I do to impress coach? And coach is telling me not to cry like a sissy. I'm gonna suck this up. I can't be that. If I do that, I'm not a man. I'm gonna be seen as less than. And that's one of the things that I share in the coaches seminars that I do, is that's where we fail language. The words that come out of our mouth carry so much weight, and you never know what people are going through behind closed doors. So you're constantly telling somebody, you're not this, you're not that. Why not build people up? Why can't we come at an approach from, how can I make you a better football player or sports or athlete? More importantly, when I tell people now, when I coach these kids, I said, I want you to become a better man. Screw the football. Screw sports. That's secondary. Yeah, this is our job. I'm here to coach you as an athlete. I want you to leave. When you're done with me, I want you to become a better man. Because now you're going into society, right? Sports only last so long, right? Like I played pro football up until I was 30 years old, retired when I was 30 years old. I have a whole rest of my life now, right? And I was very blessed, fortunate to play that long. A lot of people won't even get that opportunity, but there's so many other people that you can make an impact on, through sport. But it's changing that narrative and the words that come out of mouth, the language that we use at a young age needs to be changed.
Needs to be changed. Changing that narrative. So, well, you kind of mentioned like some of the barriers that like are kind of put in place to kind of cause that, right? To cause that feeling of like, I have to be tough and I have to be strong. And like we talk about it a lot. I'm hearing, in different environments and different communities now where like it actually is being talked about. But how do you actually educate people to like listen to you and actually practice that? And because people don't realize, like going back to the medicine wheel here, the emotional aspect. So you have to do things that, are fulfilling and nourishing that aspect of the medicine wheel. If you're losing that, you're not even fulfilling a basic part of Indigenous people's, lives.
Yeah. So what was your question? Sorry, the intercom was going on, so I couldn't hear you. Sorry. Say it again.
I said, like, when you're missing that aspect, right? Like when you're missing that aspect of the medicine wheel, you're not fulfilling it.
Yeah.
So you're unbalanced. You're like this, right? I want to answer this question really quickly here. Where do feelings of shame come from when men express their emotions with other men, friends, or family?
Where do feelings? Sorry, what was the question? Where do feelings of shame come from? When men express their emotions. That's a good question. I think shame comes from not being able to have the ability to express their emotions. I think that's what it is. I think it answers it within the question there. I think shame comes. I know for myself, shame for me. Well, why I didn't want to speak about things was because for one, I didn't want to acknowledge the pain and hurt, that I caused other people. It's that ownership. I think it's that ownership piece, and I think until we're able to normalize being vulnerable. I think that's where I think a lot of people, the shame comes from, is not being able to show that type of emotion, of maybe the pain or hurt that we've caused, or just like, oh, I'm just gonna shut off because I might cry and I don't want you to see me cry.
Yeah.
Release that, bro. Like, let that go, because that pain, we're just suppressing those emotions, and now someone else is gonna have to deal with that. And I don't know if I answered that, that question. But I think for myself, we look at where the shame come from. I think for me, where shame came from for me was number one, not taking ownership of the pain or hurt that I may have caused somebody else, or else, getting ready to feel emotional or vulnerable. And then so I'm like, no, I'm going to shut down because I don't want to show that side, because I don't want this individual to see me as less than. Does that make sense?
So had you been educated about it, do you think you would have dealt with it different?
Honestly, if I wasn't educated,
say somebody, exactly what you're saying, say somebody told you this when you were a kid, do you think the way that you handled things would have been different when expressing your emotions?
If I wouldn't have known it, no. If I wouldn't have been taught, no. I would have been like, I'm not going to show you emotion, because that's not I'm a man, and a man doesn't show emotion. So if I wouldn't have learned, if I wouldn't have gone through the training that I've gone through over the last, it started back in 2011. So actually 11 years now, I would still have that same mentality. How we change things is to learn behavior. Like, you go to school to learn something, right? A specific skill set. That's what people are doing. Same with this. I was doing gender-based violence prevention. I've had to learn. I've gone through years of training to get to where I'm at now. But the biggest thing now is just having a normal conversation, normalizing, to be able to show emotion, to cry. People will apologize. Sometimes so when I do my guys only section, so everyone comes in, it's a 3-day intense training, full day trainings, and we get guys in, and I'm working with trades guys or other pro athletes, alpha males, let's say. But by day 3, they're breaking down. I'd probably say at least 70% of the men are crying, because we've never held a space for men to come. And what you said earlier, feel safe, be able to be vulnerable, and speak about things that for years they've never been allowed, not necessarily allowed, but have been shamed, to talk about these type of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's just like a domino effect too. Like even when we look at, the suicide rates, there's so much males who are, taking their lives. And, that should be like the first thing that you see that and you're like, okay, like we
There's
need
a
to
problem.
talk about this. This is an issue. This needs to be talked about. And these men need to feel like they can be comfortable to, speak about the way that they're feeling. And I think that's too, like a lot of people will, bring it back to intergenerational trauma and they came from the residential schools and the systems that were there to colonize and assimilate indigenous people, the ways that they were treated and stuff like that. But I think too, like, we have to take accountability because we have that choice. We have that choice to decide if, we want to talk about it or not. Because even as a woman, like, am I making a space, like providing a safe space to make sure that, these men around me can talk about the way that they're feeling? Because I have to think about that too. I have to, think I am always talking about the way I'm feeling, but am I making it feel like they're okay to speak about what they're going through? Do they feel like they can talk to me about it? And that's another thing that I, always take into consideration now is not only is it the woman that can talk about mental health, but it's the men. We need to make sure that the men feel like they can be, talk about stuff that's going on, their emotions and their feelings and anything in their life, trauma, abuse, like alcohol addictions. Those are all things that men need to think is okay to talk about because, it's been normalized for a lot of years now for women to talk about it. And I think it's just, men have to see that we're in a different society now.
Yeah.
And it's more modern. And so there are environments now where men are able to express the way that they're feeling. And when that happens, when men start to, have conversations exactly how you are, that's when things start to change. That's when people, start to support one another, see each other, make sure that men feel heard and men feel seen. Because it's okay. Women can't just show emotions. Men can too. Because they feel, man, people forget, like, they feel the same stuff that women feel.
They do.
They feel it too. They're just better at hiding it.
Isn't that the truth though? But we've been taught that from a young age, and it really goes back to being able to hold these spaces for men to come together and have these conversations without fear of judgment. I think one of the biggest things, like when we talk about toxic masculinity or violence against women, there's so much shame that comes with that from men and being now shunned, right? Like the perpetrators, people that have committed these acts of violence or abuse, they need help. That's a human being. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, if this person isn't getting the proper care or rehabilitation, well, now we're just putting this individual back into another toxic situation. And so that person needs healing. But I think it's from a societal standpoint, we demonize our men that make the mistakes. They need to take accountability. Men 1000% need to take accountability for their actions. But now from that action, it says, okay, how can I now rectify this? How can I make this wrong all right? What are my now steps to ensure that this person that I hurt, one, they feel safe, and protected. But I'll tell you what, from talking with men from all over Canada, throughout my travels and facilitating these workshops, the biggest thing is, I think, that why they don't feel comfortable talking. One, we don't hold the space. Two is we demonize them now, for this mistake. And I get it. And I tell them all the time, you need to be accountable. You need to be held accountable for your actions. But this is a human being too. When you look back to what you said, Hailey, from the generational impacts of the residential, 1000%, that plays a role in when we talk about the domestic violence or abuse, our parents not knowing how to love us because of what had happened, all the horrific things that had happened to them. But on a positive note as well, things are starting to change. When I speak at universities, there are conversations that have been, that are now being normalized with our younger generation. People are feeling open to talk more about these things. So, I mean, I think on a positive note, things are starting to push the scale, but we need more people to now normalize these type of conversations.
Bang on. I want to answer a question here from Credence Night Traveler. She said, what does it look like to support a man through a vulnerable experience or moments of weakness? Would your answer change for a woman? I want to hear your answer. Keep it kind of short because we're getting to the end of the night here, but and then I'll just answer it myself because I think this is a good question. And I think this is like the perfect way to, have these conversations with men and for them to feel okay with sharing their emotions and stuff like that. So
I think that's a great question. I think what that looks like is sometimes we want to become solution based. Well, let's get to the root of the issue. Like, let's find out, why this individual is doing what they're doing. It goes back to meeting them where they're at. I think there's a history with every single person. There's a reason why everyone acts out a certain way or continues on a path of destruction. If we can't get to the root issue, that person will continue down that path. That person is going to want to seek out. But I think, and you talk about people that are recovering, even addicts that are coming out, people don't want to be told what to do. They want to be supported. And it's coming at it from, so if I'm coming through something, Hailey, and you're like, JR, you need to do this, I will never do it. But if you come and say, now, JR, how can I support you? Or what's going on?
Yeah.
Having a simple question, asking, are you okay? We don't say that enough. We're quick to get pissed off at the other person or the individual, whoever it is that has caused pain, right? And it's like, okay, let's find out why that person's hurting. Because it goes back to hurt people. We do things to self-destruct. I did it multiple times, tons of times, throughout my life. I just didn't feel worthy until I learned to love myself and respect myself. So I know you told me to answer this question quickly. Sorry. Is just being there and finding out, are they okay? And how can I now support you rather than being solution-based, telling them what they need to do? That'll never work. That person's got to want to help, but maybe they don't know how to get help. So maybe it's helping them find ways once you find out what it is, why they keep, being hurt or whatever, showing weakness, whatever that may be. And now would your answer change my answer wouldn't change if it was a man or a woman. My answer would be the exact same. If I was dealing with somebody in a moment of weakness, I want to meet that individual where they're at, regardless. I treat people as a human. I don't think it changes if you're a man or a woman.
Or both.
Yeah, or both, or whatever you identify as. You know what I mean? It's for people that need to show support is just being there and being present, not telling them what they need to do. People always want to become solution based. How about just shut the hell up and listen to the individual that's hurting? If we're being real, that's just from the work that I've done and even working with different counselors.
But I think for everyone too, though, sorry to cut you off. For everyone too, it's different. Everyone it has a different way of the way that they want to be supported.
Yeah.
Some people want to talk about it. Some people just want that presence.
Yeah.
Some people want physical touch.
Mm-hmm.
Some people want, some space, and then that's you're respecting that. And so I think it's important to have these conversations. Like, you need to have that conversation with whoever it might be, a friend, a family member, an acquaintance, a partner, whoever it is. You need to have that conversation. So if you're going through a difficult time, if you're struggling, or if you're, having a negative experience right now, then I want to know how I can support you. In what way will, satisfy you? Because I might think personally, I like, that comfort. I want you to show me all the love. I want the hugs. But then there comes another time where I'm just like, I don't want that. Please go away. I'm trying to be like by myself right now. And that's all I need. I just need to be by myself. And so it's important to have that conversation with that person so that you understand and you don't feel like you're doing the wrong thing. Because then you do too much, you hurt the other person. You're doing too less, you hurt the other person. So to meet them halfway and really say like, what is it that I can do? You need that conversation. You need it.
You hit the nail right on the head. That's it. It's just simple. It's having a conversation, asking, right? Exactly what you said. Meet them where they're at.
So it's coming to the end of the night here, and man, we had a lot of good stuff to say. I just I love podcasting because I learn a lot and I love to talk. So sometimes I can't shut up, but but I love to have conversations, and I think this was really important because a lot of men feel alone, and man, sometimes when you can touch someone in that way and then, be vulnerable for a couple minutes or even a briefly do that. And then that person goes home and feels better because they are able to communicate and talk about it. So these are conversations that need to be talked about, JR, and you're doing that. And you need to see that what you're doing is going to make a change. And this will encourage other people to, get down that path. And man, like this is tough stuff to talk about. And the fact that you're taking that on, that shows that strength. That shows your power. That is your power. So although you might say some things that make you look weak, you're powerful because you are able to speak about it, because you are able to be vulnerable about it and speak your truth, share your story. And be confident in who you are and continue to do the amazing things that you do for Indigenous people. And that's what we need. We need to uplift one another and support one another and be here. We need to just listen sometimes. So I am going to give you the screen here for a couple minutes, and I just want to say, thank you in advance, and I'll probably say it after, but, just say a couple things and talk to our audience. So the screen is all yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Hailey. It truly was an honor to be on your podcast. I appreciate it. I'm going to leave with one thing, and it's a quote from Martin Luther King, and it says, "In the end, we may not remember the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends." And so my hope for the people listening in, we know people that are struggling. We know people that are hurting. My hope is that we do something. We say something. It's so easy to be like, oh, I'm going to check in with that individual another time. Tomorrow isn't promised. So I encourage other people, somebody that's struggling with something, even a male, doesn't even have to be a male, whoever it may be, that may be hurting, reach out to that individual, show that you care. We need to come from a place of being an inconvenience to now somebody that actually truly does care about one another. So once again, thank you so much, Hailey. I'm always impressed by how well you speak and your leadership. Only being 19 years old, I'm excited to see where you go in the next few years of leadership. Congrats again on being elected. That was pretty cool. I was there to see that. So shout out to you and all the amazing that you're doing, for all the amazing work that you're doing for our people. Much love.
Oh, my heart just went pitter-patter. I'm just kidding. This is a good feeling. This is what we need to do. We need to uplift one another, encourage one another. And when somebody's doing something great, let them know. Tell them somebody's going through a tough time. Be there for them, support them. And these are conversations that need to be had we need to have these. And just masculinity in general. So I hope all the people that were watching today were able to take something away from this and learn. And, if you were able to learn something today, that you go educate someone, you go teach someone, sit down with someone and talk to them. Make sure that, they feel heard and that they feel seen. So thank you all for coming on to tonight's episode of the Newo Wellness Podcast, a space where we grow and nourish all aspects of self. Thank you for tuning in. Peace and love.